Hello. All right, looks like most of the people who are here early are here. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Yeah, we've got Andrew Evans back today. It's the LogRocket React meetup. We've got a couple really great meetups scheduled next month. I'll send those around with the recording. And yeah, the recording for this will be sent after in case you have to drop off or weren't able to make it. So yeah, Andrew today is talking about React and NX. And NX is seemingly like a new framework, as I have not heard of it much. So I'll let him go into exactly what we're going to be covering. So yeah, recording will be sent after. If you have any questions, leave them in the chat, the Q&A. We'll probably get to them towards the end, unless it's really relevant to what we're looking at. And yeah, this meetup's brought to you by LogRocket. LogRocket's a front-end performance monitoring solution designed to help you fix your applications quicker, reproduce issues more quickly, and understand how users are interacting with your web applications, mobile applications, websites, anything with the front end. We monitor it. What's really nice about LogRocket is we're kind of mixing what you typically think of like a normal error tracking software with like an analytics software, and then a session replay monitoring tool. And we've got a lot of really exciting machine learning backed features coming out. So rather than just like a stream of all of your JavaScript errors or React specific kind of front end errors, like something like Sentry would give you, we are going to tell you exactly which issues are actually impacting your users from completing a specific flow or being happy generally. So you don't have to sift through like a giant fire hose of all these issues, and you can go fix the ones that really matter. So yeah, if you're interested in hearing more about LogRocket, you can follow up with me at luke@logrocket.com. I'm going to send you the recording so you can respond to me, or you can get a free trial at logrocket.com/signup. And yeah, that's all I've got. Take it away, Andrew.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, Luke. Let me see if I can share my screen, share screen. Okay. And I believe it would be this one. Okay, you should be able to see Chrome. Can you see Chrome?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so hi everyone, my name is Andrew Evans. Today I'm going to basically walk through building a React application with NX. It's based on this post, which I'm sure you've seen in the different things from LogRocket, but everything I'm covering is going to basically follow the sample project that I have out on GitHub. And you can either, do a git clone and follow along, or this post kind of walks you through all the basics. And most of the stuff is actually pretty well documented on NX's site. They have a lot of really great documentation on how to get set up. They have a lot of stuff specifically for not just React, but Angular, Lerna, and the Mono repos, which I'll talk about in a second. And then, they have some features with TypeScript and the like. And this page specifically, I was going to show at the end because this is talking about scaling. And again, I'll get to that in just a second. So with that, I will go ahead and start. So let's see, slide, what is it? View slide, there we go. Yes, good, okay. You can still see the slideshow, everybody?
Sure.
Okay, all right, cool. Okay, so in my talk today, like I said, I'm gonna basically outline NX, walk through setting up a React project with NX, and then I'm going to talk about, just basically the user experience. And then at the end, like I said, I was going to talk about scaling a little bit. And as a full disclosure, I know it's going to come up. I haven't actually used NX in an enterprise application. There were one of my past jobs, I actually worked at Capital One, and we did use Lerna and like NX for a couple of things. So I have a little bit of experience at the scale level, but most of the experience I've had has kind of been more of like side project, kind of things. But all the same, I think you're really going to like it. And so, that was just my small disclosure because I know someone's going to ask. So a little bit about me. I'm a front-end developer. I work at AWS. I've done full stack. I have a master's degree in computer science, and I also have an MBA. And these are some fun pictures of me and my wife and our cats. And I also do woodworking as a side kind of fun project life thing. And I do a farmer's market twice a month here locally in Richmond. So if you're in Richmond, you can come by and check it out. So what's NX? All right, so NX is, it's actually from a company called Narwhal. They've been around for a while. Victor Savkin was, I believe, at Google, I think. And I think he was one of the founding members of the Angular team. And he broke off and started Narwhal, which then generated, Narwhal does a lot of really cool things. They have a lot of large customers, and they have a lot of like, just really good, like everything from podcasts, YouTube videos to things about learning about everything web development. And the NX toolkit is kind of something that was generated by them, which actually helps, you know, us as developers quite a bit. Mainly, a lot of times you hear Narwhal and NX associated with monorepos, primarily because a lot of times, like the bigger clients use monorepos. Whether you like it or not, it's pretty well built, and it is kind of a cool like pattern to use for application development. And so that's kind of mainly, but you don't have to have a monorepo. That's just basically a side product if you were going to use NX to scaffold your app and the like. The other things that NX does offer in their tooling is computation caching. They have a dependency graph feature, which I'll show at the end, which is really cool. They also have an integrated plugin that directly connects with Cypress. So if you're familiar with Cypress for end-to-end testing, they have a plugin that will basically do it. And in my sample project, I actually created a side like projects associated just with end-to-end testing. So it's a little different than if you had done it with the you know, how to on the NX site, but nonetheless, it still shows how it's integrated. And again, like I said, you know, they work not just with React, but with Angular, Next.js, you have Express, you know, you have all of like basically the hot things in web development. They have stuff associated with it. NX also operates as a CLI. So once you install it on your machine, you can basically follow prompts and, you know, go through a scaffolding process, which is pretty user friendly. So in the post that I talked about and what I'm talking about today, I'm specifically going for React. So if you want to build a React project with NX, it all starts with just this npx create NX workspace at latest. So what this is going to do is it kicks off basically, you know, terminal commands, and it'll walk you through different dialogues specifically to what you're trying to build. So if you see like right here, this was me running it, and then immediately I picked React, but I could have just as easily picked, you know, Gatsby and Next.js, you know, any of these other frameworks, and it will scaffold what they call a workspace for that project. And so what that means is different to each one, because, you know, like a Nest project is built differently than a Next project. And if you're using like an Express versus React, obviously that's front and back end, and there's lots of nuances there. But nonetheless, this basically setup that you run with the CLI will guide your hand. And at the end of the day, you actually have a working project that has a lot of cool tools built in that you probably would have pulled in later for different needs with your client, or, you know, if your project needs something. What you have right here over to the right is basically what gets generated for a React application. And if you'll notice, you have first project ED. So this is what I was talking about, where my end-to-end testing I put into its own project. That I think that was one of the options in the scaffolding term, you know, the commands that they ask you. But in addition, you see all these other things. So there it comes with, you know, Jest configured. There's like a libs area, which I believe you can actually create libraries that, like, you know, your entire application can consume. There's also generator tools. And then, you know, for all you TypeScript fans out there, there's a TS config file that's loaded in, and you can optionally just use JavaScript. I think I just did JavaScript for this project, but you can do TypeScript and, you know, get all the goodness there as well. And then once you can add on. So once you've scaffolded this project, you can return to the NX CLI to add on things like a backend or, you know, an additional project. And again, that's kind of where the monorepo thing is. So I should have mentioned this before, but basically this kind of picture, I think, kind of explains it all. If you hear about monorepos, typically what it is it's basically all of your applications. So like any services, your front end, your back end, all in the same repository. Typically, traditionally, you would see what they call a poly repo, which is basically each part of your, project is in its own repo. So, you have like a service, you have a library, you might have like the mobile application is off by itself, or, obviously the web or React project would be, off by itself. All of this is lumped into monorepo, and NX will leverage tools like Lerna to basically isolate installations and isolate management of that. And there's a lot more to this. I mean, we're just kind of, touching the surface on a lot of the things that NX can do, which I really highly recommend check out YouTube, check out, NX's site to learn more about this. But this is kind of the difference. If you're just totally, you've never heard of monorepo before, this is kind of like a fundamental thing that you can think of. So, so that's basically all goes into setting it up. Then once you've set it up, you can scaffold your app. So what's the difference between setting up and scaffolding? It's pretty much the same thing. Scaffolding is what I'm describing is basically going back and adding pieces to the app. So whereas before, I've just basically created this bare bones thing, and I created a React application, which sits right here in the apps folder. If you come back and you want to, build a back end right alongside your front end monorepo, what you can do is you just go and install, in this case, I wanted Express. So I installed the Express plugin, and then I ran this command, which basically creates an API with the name first project. So if you go over here, you'll notice once you've ran it, if you see this kind of picture right here, this is the same as what we saw right here. So, but you notice that all I have in the original command is just first project EDE. Once I come back and I add this API, I now have an API. So this is kind of the concept of what I'm talking about with monorepos. Like you've got, your back end is sitting right here, right alongside your front end, and then your testing project. If you open up the API, what you'll notice is that it kind of follows essentially what you would expect with an Express app. Again, I chose Express. They also have Next, and I think there was a Nest. I think that's the one, if I'm not mistaken, that is also a backend. But anyway, what you end up here is you have an entry point. So like your main TS file, this is where you put your routes, or at least the start when your backend node service starts. You also have like an environment file. You obviously can include assets. There's an app folder for, a lot, whatever. I mean, the cool part of Express is you kind of have your own, your flexibility with how you want to do it. But the point is that this is all scaffolded, all ready to go. What ends up, if you go into the entry point or the main file with that backend, this is what you're going to see. And this is, again, like if you're familiar with Express, this is basically what you normally would see. You're importing Express. In this case, they have a get route. Then they start the server associated with a port, and then you're good to go. The front end project, this is just basically your app.js file. This is what you would normally see with the React project. So, and this is what gets generated by the NX scaffolding. So if you go all the way back here, at this point, we had created our React project, which is what you see over here on the right. And then once you, go and add this API, you're going to get all of this stuff. And, this is basically, the kind of training wheels that they give you to start with. Once you start there, if you follow the tutorial is like a to-do app, which is what my sample project basically followed. And, as with any standard, front end kind of practice, you create dummy data, right? So you can build out your front end pieces, and then when you're ready, you'll actually tie it to the real database or service or whatever you're using as your backend. So what we have here is basically how the app starts. And so you've got like this, you're just storing as a local array in local state with uState with React. What happens is once you're ready and you've added this API, what you can do is then you can create a proxy. So if you go into proxy config, which is right inside your apps folder in the scaffolded files, you can add this thing right here, which is basically your API. And then you're saying hit anything prefixed with API hits your local host. So this, in the case of, a deployed environment, you would imagine that this would be like your domain name, or maybe you might have like a subdomain or something like that. But all of that would be defined here. But the idea is that whenever you do like a fetch call, you don't have to do anything fancy. You don't have to use like Axios and add a bunch of like attributes or something. All you have to do is do a straight fetch call, and NX is going to intelligently understand that that fetch call actually has to hit your local host, which is hitting your API. So this makes like everything rolled up under one. You don't have to have, a situation where you've got like two different things running and you've got to track your ports and all that stuff. All that's done for you, which is really sweet. This is kind of basically it in action. So if you start, like I said, building out your little front end app, you've got, local state all set up. Then you go over here and now you're actually wanting to connect to your API. And notice that I just say fetch /API/todos. It's leveraging the proxy that I was just talking about. So this is going to hit your local host. And and I'll do this in just a second on the demo, but you see right here, you run it, and as you're hitting your add to dos, it's making calls directly to your local server. So one other thing, there's like lots of different things that you can do with like NX and scripting. They come with like a multiple number of scripts that help to isolate and optimize installs and like hot load or hot reloading and stuff like that. What I just did, just quick and dirty, was I used a package called concurrently. And so basically what concurrently does is you can just run multiple node processes alongside each other, really, and you use it for testing and stuff like that. For today, what I did for this demo was I just did concurrently, and then npm run starts your React application, and then if you call serve API, that runs the npx command to start the API. I'll show you that in the code in just a second, but this was kind of a slight disclosure about how all this works. I think there's another way you can do this within the configuration of NX without having to use concurrently, but I don't know for sure. And this got me, where I need to go. All right, and then the last thing was, or second, well, no, there's a couple more things. So Cypress testing, as I said, it comes all integrated. In the case of what I did, I used, I just said I chose Cypress as a separate project rather than like part of, I believe if you don't do that, it just by default goes into an EDE folder. Once you do that, then right alongside your project, you've got essentially what you are familiar with if you're familiar with Cypress. You've got your standard fixtures, integration, plugins, and support. This is beyond the scope of this talk, but basically all that's all hooked up for you, and then you can just go write your tests. And in this case, they've got a little test that's like side at visit. You're visiting your hosted application, or your locally running application, and then you exercise the test. But this is really cool because alternatively, like if you were installing this with React, what you would end up having to do is you would do an install with React, and then you would have to install Cypress a lot, like as a dev dependency. Then you would have to add, various things based on how you want to configure variables or like a base, but URL base for your project and stuff like that. All that's done for you right outside the gate with NX, which is really sweet. So the last thing that feature-wise I have before I'll show you the demo is basically dependency graph. So if you're familiar with, I think there's a couple of different packages that do this with Angular. I think you can do it with React also, but basically the idea is that you can visualize dependencies, you can visualize like even your bundle. And what we have here is right out the gate, if you run npx nx dep graph, what this will do is it generates a dependency graph based on how your project is structured, assuming that you're using an NX workspace. And so what you end up having here is, in this case, I have an API and the first project. So this is a back end, and then front end, and then my EDE is right here. And this is just showing you that the EDE is like a dependency, I guess, more or less of the front end project, meaning that the code that's exercised in the EDE is running, your front end code, which then also is running your API. But anyway, long story short, there's a lot of configuration with this, and I'm just, skimming the surface on what you can do with this as well. The other thing that's really cool with NX is there's a lot of package JSON scripts that just pop out the gate when you generate your project. If you notice that there's these things called affected, what this will do is it actually will basically isolate rebuilds. So, one of the biggest problems that people have with deployment and with, the software development lifecycle with JavaScript is you have to recompile your node modules. A lot of times people leave caching. A lot of times people will try to limit that so that, the user doesn't have to wait for as long for things to literally load. You want to keep that bundle size small. All of these affected commands help you to isolate the way that the project is rebuilt. And I think some of this actually already happens under the hood, but the idea is that as your project is running, and then obviously when it finally gets bundled and deployed, these scripts will help to isolate only building what you need when you get ready to go. I don't know too much about this also, so this is just a disclaimer, because I would love to, but I haven't gotten a chance to dive into the science behind it. But this is kind of like the concept that they're delivering with these scripts, which is another really cool feature. So let's do some tests, or not tests, some code if I can get out of my thing. Okay. All right. So let me just show you the project. So we have here, this is the sample project that I got pulled down. Just like I was saying a second ago, you have an apps folder within the apps. You notice that I've got the API, which is the API that I just was just showing you. And then I've got the first project, which is the React project. So this is, basically all of what you would normally associate with a React project. And then ultimately, I also have the first project EDE, which is right here. And this is what you would see in a Cypress project. The package.json file has a lot of these scripts that I was talking about. And you see the affected. All this comes right out the gate. All this was basically configured for you, which is really cool. You can just run a linter. They've got there's formatting that they can do, and then there's also obviously their workspace generator, which will and all this comes with an NX workspace. So if you use this toolkit and you use this to build your project, you're going to have all these tools at your fingertips, which is really cool. And obviously my little add-on here was just to serve the API and then run everything with concurrently. And then you see all these packages that come right out the gate. They've got a plugin for Prettier. It comes with ESLint for Prettier. They've got Cypress. They've also got A11Y. So if you're doing internationalization, stuff like that, all that comes out of the box. And then the list goes on, and you can add more of these as you pick a back end of choice or a front end of choice and the like. So to prove to you that I'm not lying, if I run all together, then this will start, notice it's serving the project. This is going, and it's serving the React project. And then once the React project is running, then it is running here it is, entry point. Yeah, so now it's running your Express server. So if I go over to localhost 4200, which should be able to do right here. Oh, not 3000. Sorry. There it is. Now we have our to-dos, and I'll just go ahead and throw up the inspector right here. And so what you can go to network, there it is. If I do an add to do, notice it just did a fetch call, did a post. And again, this is using the proxy. And the proxy config that I was just showing you a second ago, I believe is it in the proxy? I'm gonna have to go and see if I can find it. But anyway, this was the project. So I know this isn't super snazzy. I mean, this is basically just a dumb little to-do app, but I think you can kind of get the impression of what you can do and where you can grow with this. Basically, the idea is that because you have all these tools at your fingertips, you're not having to basically install them, on your own. You can also do add-ons to help manage the services and get into more of the monorepo-y kind of things. NX has, as I said, a lot of really good documentation. They have stuff about using it at the enterprise level. So enterprise level meaning somebody big, like Capital One, or any of their any big ticket customer that you can think of that might have a need for a monorepo. They have their documentation, talks about scoping, obviously, which is important if you're going to have maybe you have a company and they have multiple lines of businesses that you want to isolate. You can get into scoping with the way that your monorepo is configured. And then you also have libraries. Everybody likes libraries, and for good reason. I mean, you can reuse the code everywhere. But basically, they've got some examples. And I just would recommend checking this out if maybe you're working at an enterprise company and you're getting ready to do a greenfield project, or maybe you're getting to do a rewrite and you're looking at a good toolkit to get to do. They have like all the documentation here is like, you can pretty much, I mean, it's like it's designed for them. You don't know anything to, getting up to scale. And so we have like, the setup, they've got stuff specifically for TypeScript. Again, like I said, they have a lot of cool YouTube videos that you can check out. And anyway, I highly recommend checking out the site to get your hands, involved in some NX development. And most of this is, I think, open source also. It is. So you can actually go out here and they've got, everything, and they've got like lots of good documentation, and, it's really pretty cool. But anyway, I think I babbled on enough. So I will turn it over to questions, or open it up to Luke, I guess, if you want to talk some more.
I had a couple questions.
Sure.
Someone asked, but you would still need React, right? NX is not replacing React, no, but working alongside.
Yeah, I mean, NX is like, I mean, you would just assume, like, treat it as if it was like a kind of like a helper, and it basically takes React and then it creates a happy place for React to set. Is not not trying to be silly, but like that's like the, kind of the idea. And then the nice part is that all the tools that come with it, you would probably use anyway, and so it's nice because it's all in one place. If that makes sense.
And then, like, does it need to be within an Angular React project? Like, I've got a bunch of like vanilla JS services mixed with front ends that are not React. Like, would it actually even make sense to go like, organize everything more? Like,
yeah, so I don't know. Like, I mean, I just being not completely honest, like I'm not sure about vanilla JS, but I do know that an NX workspace does basically scaffold out a way that I think you could do that with like scripting, like you can
put in a little bit more.
Yeah, and you could basically just like custom, create your stuff, and then you get a chance to, like, I think those kind of projects honestly might be even a better, role for something like this, because you think about if you have something with vanilla JS or something that's just like your own framework, it might not always be easy to integrate tools. And so if you run it in one of these things, all those things are kind of right there, and then all you got to do is hook them up. So that would be the kind of, and I think there is like a workspace command. When I was at Capital One, we did something like that at one point, and it was like, it just literally like creates folders. Like it dumps like a couple things in folders. It pulls in a couple of like, like a linter and some other stuff. But then from there, it's up to you what, you want to build out. So yeah, I'm almost positive that actually probably would work.
Yeah. And like, would you say if, like, what's kind of like a good indicator that a project's a good fit for this? Like, tons of separate services all getting consumed by one app, or tons of apps, one service?
I mean, right. I mean, I keep going back to Capital One because that was like my like primary experience with it. But like I would say that anything that you would honestly be considering like a mono repo for, I think Disney does something, if I'm not mistaken, like some of the development they do at Disney, and like but like something like at scale that I think you could do it. But the thing is that all these tools are, it will work for any size. So like you could do it for a Hello World app, or like if you've got like a fun side project where you want to create like a I don't know, like a game or something. Like this might be a really good fit for it because it has all that stuff. So it's not necessarily a thing where like it's only for the big projects. It's just that this leverages itself to a point where it makes sense at that scale, because all the tools are there. And that's, again, kind of going back to the whole mono repo stick, because it's like that's one of the sales pitches for mono repos, is that you can manage a lot under like one thing. There's a guy, the Fire, is it Angular Fire? Is that the guy? The Fireship.io. He did a video I was just watching the other day where he showed Angular specifically. I think they have like a front end for your front end. It's like basically this like management page, and he was showing how that will tie into this, which is kind of cool. So it's like, so I do more React development than anything now. So like it's been so long since I've gone that far into Angular, but I'm sure React probably might have something like that too.
Cool. Yeah, the proxying's so easy.
Yeah, I mean, right. That's one of the cool parts. You don't have to do something like fancy or like an interceptor that you would have to redirect your API calls and stuff. That's what I've done before, and it was nice that it was all under the hood.
Like when you were at Capital One, I know you weren't using NX in particular, but like did a kind of monorepo system like this, did that really like was deployment just harder in other
Well,
ways because you had to like you've got all the other deployment stuff going on and like
yeah, I mean that's always like the pros and cons.
uh,
I will say that like at Capital One, your website's used by like millions of people, so that gives you an idea of like what a deployment would look like, because it's like you can't, failure at that point isn't really an option. So it's like, but like I think that unfortunately my experience there wasn't super good because they did an upgrade of a lot of their systems. So when I was there, we were rewriting a lot of Angular JS into like Angular 2 and stuff like that. So like I didn't really, unfortunately, I didn't get to see it kind of, come to full maturity because I left before some of that effort was done finished. But like I would say in general it was helpful. Like I think it did they dove into, they actually had some Narwhal people, I think, helping them a little bit. So like there was fair, some of it was like customized, I guess, for their use case. But I would say that just based on all the stuff that I'm reading and I've been seeing about the latest like NX toolkit, I think the thing with like the dependencies, like those NX the affected commands that they had, I think all of that is supposed to make it so that when you have this like army of services that you're trying to deploy, it's going to be able to isolate things and cache things where they can be and that kind of stuff.
cool. Someone asked, does it work with Django, Python, Java? It doesn't.
No,
But I just like quickly Googled and someone built the NX Python plugin or whatever.
really, that's so cool. I mean, this is like the beauty of open source. Like you can just go out and do stuff. I was gonna say no because everything I saw was it's all targeted towards like JavaScript.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I know like I said, all the guys that work on this are all heavily involved in open source too. So I'm sure there's stuff out there.
Yeah. And then like if it's in more of like a tied down like hosting environment, like Heroku, someone asked about, like, would you envision that like using something like NX being not feasible? I haven't used Heroku
Well, I mean,
for like hosting providers that are like super kind of rigid about stuff.
yeah, I mean, every time I've tried to do something like that, usually you end up just trying to find where the bundle is. Like usually like a hosted provider, like Netlify, I use Netlify for like a lot of random things. And like usually if you just point to there's some kind of configuration. I've never actually used Heroku. I've heard a lot of people talk about it, but it's like it was kind of, I don't want to say before my time, but like a lot of other stuff was really popular once I got into like web development. But like I would just say that, just generate your bundle and then, try to tie it to wherever the provider needs. And there's probably like a workaround. I mean, NX is very like popular. So I feel like, someone has done something or, you just got to Google it.
Get the bundle where it needs to be.
Right. Or you might have to do like, I mean, I remember one time I converted a React app to Electron. And there's like a lot of stuff you have to do with that. But at the end of the day, all you had to do was basically point the bundle to where the Electron builder could pull it and then generate the binaries and all that stuff. So it's like, I think, I'm not, that was not with NX, but I'm saying like the same concept, is there.
Cool. Anyone else have any questions? Looks like no. All right. So yeah, send this around with the blog post, any other docs Andrew can think of. Yeah. Thanks for everyone for joining. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for letting me speak today.
See you.
All right. Bye, everybody.